So this is popping in with another video with Dr. Nobody, and a lot of people be like, you ain't no doctor. What are you talking about, doctor? But is somebody a doctor if they do the same things of a doctor? So I can be appreciated as a nobody, and then also a lot of times doctors are trying to give you things that like such as advice or different things that you didn't ask for, that may or may not be better for them than it is for you. And from that sense, I'm offering advice that was unsought. So I'm calling myself a doctor nobody. But I'm just gonna share some insights that were occurring to me. But I do offer these in the spirit of like reciprocity and like sharing of understanding. There's a book, I think it's called Swami Vivekananda, about yoga. It's about it's just a book called Yoga, and it's about like 4 different forms of yoga. I think it's called like Bhakti, Jhana, Raha, and Kriya. I think Kriya yoga is like, I'm not an expert on yoga, but I think Kriya yoga is like your like postures and stuff like that. And then you have your jhana yoga, which is like actually studying and scholarship and learning is considered a form of yoga. And so the universe is in perfect balance and harmony. And another name for that is yoga. And so when we practice yoga, we are coming in closer consonance in agreement with who and what we already are. But I could, maybe you could just say you're dispensing with false notions and lazy postures that maybe dissipate your actual consonance and congruence with who you are and what you are, which are all things. And that's what yoga is in any sense, according to Arthur Avalon. But the most difficult and arduous and also dangerous form of yoga, because all different undertakings of there's no value without risk, and any form of value has been either fashioned or attended by risk, as it is enjoyed by anyone, anywhere, anyhow. But that risk was not necessarily sustained or borne, like carried by the person or people enjoying the benefits of the risk. And that's something that Nicholas Nassim Taleb talks about in some of his books that I've referenced, such as Anti-Fragile and I think Black Swan. I think he might have one called Skin in the Game. I think he might have, I'm not certain, but I think he might have been one of the ones to pioneer that term skin in the game, or at least start enunciating it before it had been largely popularized. And that actually refers to the fact that somehow you're not entirely engaged, but according to him, you're not entirely congruent if you're not demonstrating or bearing some of the risk that would attend some of the value that you're enjoying or procuring or creating. And in our system of modern reality, a lot of a lot of the risk that is inherent in any undertaking or status, it is appreciated and understood on very sophisticated levels. Some of those would be like your insurance. I think it's called an actuary, like people who understand insurance variables, risk variables, but also value and the risk to a person that would have property, and then the risk of someone that would support a person that has risk. That's very sophisticated, but some of it can be understood in mathematical terms. And I once or twice heard that might actually be one of your highest paying jobs, generally speaking, that's not actual like landed wealth. One of your highest like white collar jobs would be like around understanding risk variables. And then another high paying white collar job would be like what actually Nassim Nicholas Taleb was in the past, was like a trader, or like I think they call it a pit trader, like your high end like Wall Street people who do like trading and analysis. It's related to that insurance actuary stuff, and those are some of your highest paying positions. Another one of your highest paying positions is like a financial analyst. And I had a professor in college who was very intelligent. She was a history professor. She actually wanted to see me work in medicine, but she was saying that she thought that back then, that so in the past, like doctors were considered affluent in times past, and a lot of times doctors still have a lot of the status and rank similar to other times, but I think it was almost like a near demigod status that doctors had, but also some of their affluence could be felt and appreciated that way in the past. But what she said around, this is about like now 10 or 12 years ago that she had said this, is that your doctors are now not more so as, they're not truly affluent, or that she was enunciating the difference between affluence and wealth. So a lot of people who are well-to-do, like professionals of higher tiers, they, even when they're getting close to like low 6 figures, I'm talking about my backside like this, but they're not still considered wealthy according to like people of an educated background wouldn't call that wealthy in itself, although it can be wealth for intents and purposes, but it's more so affluence. But then when you go to having property that is capital, that is standing, privilege, title, content, holding that is capable of generating revenue without your direct effort or oversight in as you sleep and such, that would be wealth. So as you're still earning an income, however high that income is, that you would still have to spend labor, it's more so affluence and not entirely wealth at that point. But all I meant to say is that some of your highest tiers of affluence would be, and according to her, about 12 years ago, she was saying that a financial analyst may be doing far better than a doctor, generally speaking. But that's probably very arbitrary, and that could go up and down either side of that. But I wouldn't know about that. But all I meant is that some, at least is appreciated that some of your highest tiers of white collar, that is professional work, that is still tied to output in labor, intellectual or physical, would be your financial analyst, your insurance actuaries, and then your traders and like your traders and your Wall Street people. And what they're all equally doing is they're analyzing risk, and risk and opportunity is what their risk and opportunity for leverage and advantage is what they're dealing with. But the Nicholas Taleb is maybe you could appreciate Nicholas Taleb as there's a word for when people speak out against the thing that they were participating in for conscience and for the benefit of the public. He's a whistleblower. You could almost say, even though he's an academic and author now, you could almost call him a whistleblower. And a lot of some of my criticism of professionals in these videos, I wouldn't have the gravity or the perspective or the grounding to enunciate some of those thoughts and even understand my experience within some of these realms without coming across Nicholas Taleb. And he talks about some of the gaming and racketing within a lot of different fields and tiers of society, no less than professionals, some of your food, exercise, medicine. There's really a lot of gaming and racketing that makes a lot of life simply corrupt. And I think that's some of the blunders and some of the atrocities that we experience. You see crazy stuff going on across the world, like trench warfare in the 2020s in the Middle East, in Europe, and you would wonder how can that stuff happen, and where does it happen? But some of these things are the author Naomi Klein she's talked about she has a book called No Logo and a book called she has another book I can't recall, and these are no nonsense books about some of the atrocities of some of your higher interests of medicine, production, lawfare, legal bodies, international military, and it's you're really stepping out on a limb to even cite. I'm stepping out on a limb to cite her, but she appreciated. I forgot why I referenced her. A little bit lost the train of thought there, but so she talks about something called an externality, and that's so like if you have a factory that's producing something, but a byproduct of their mode of operating is or creating profit is a detriment to either their own employees or a community or an environment. That's called an externality. And a lot of the things that we do that are not necessarily most of the things we do are somehow related to production, but some things may not be production in itself, but just the footing and the manner of a lot of our dealings, they can be very brutal and actually fatal to one another. If you do a bad enough deal, it doesn't have to be about something that's bad for the environment, but it can be that bad for you and you are part of the environment. So that's an externality of that dealing. But a lot of it is because of the skewing of risk and the assumption of risk being put off. And then so you see different atrocities or extreme things taking place abroad or in a community. And how and why is that happening right now, right there? There may be a specific circumstance at play, but deeper is the incongruencies of risk and value and assumption and labor and undertaking and commitment and sacrifice that is so skewed, but it amounts to these sometimes heinous outcomes or just inequity. But so there's risk in all things. I said that much. So even including yoga, there's risk in it. And so the most arduous and risky one would be the jhana yoga learning. But then the bhakti, I think that's like enjoyment is a form of yoga. And then raha, I can't completely enunciate raha, but raha yoga is like I think that's very arduous also. But that's actually why I got that book, because I didn't understand raha yoga, but I had understood the other ones from Arthur Avalon.